In the middle of a deadly blizzard, a pregnant woman and her loyal German shepherd collapse on an icy mountain road only miles from losing both their lives. But just when hope seems gone, the dog makes a desperate run toward a lonely cabin in the wilderness. The elderly woman who opens that door doesn't just save them, she gives them her fire, her food, and the last thing she has left in this world, her home. As the months pass, the bond between the three of them becomes something no one expected, one woman learning how to become a mother and the other rediscovering why she was put on this earth. But when the baby is finally born, what happens next shakes the entire town to its core, revealing a secret from the old woman's past that makes this act of kindness far more powerful than anyone could possibly imagine. Before we go on, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story touches your heart, make sure you're subscribed because what happens next is a miracle you won't want to miss. The wind screamed across the frozen edge of Lake Superior, whipping icy snow into spirals that danced like pale ghosts under the flickering street lamps. The night was so silent it felt sacred except for the crunch of boots dragging across some ice. Emily Carter pressed a trembling hand over her stomach, her breath shallow as she struggled to stay upright. At 26, she was 7 months pregnant with long chestnut hair, now tangled and frozen against her cheeks, and pale skin stretched tight over sunken cheekbones. Her hazel eyes, usually soft and warm, were wide with panic and glassy from exhaustion. She wore a thin olive green coat, too light for a Minnesota winter, its buttons mismatched as though thrown on in haste. Beneath it, her black sweater clung to her body, damp from melting snow. Every step sent a sharp pain through her lower back, radiating deep into her abdomen, a contraction stronger than the last. Beside her, a German shepherd moved with alert precision. Scout, 4 years old, large and powerfully built, had thick tan and black fur now dusted with snow. His ears stood erect, his amber eyes sharp and intelligent. He had been trained as a therapy dog for veterans, yet tonight his gentleness was replaced by a fierce protectiveness. Each time Emily stumbled, Scout pressed his body against her legs to steady her, whining softly as if urging her to stay awake. His breath steamed in the frigid air, and his tail moved low and tense, signaling heightened awareness. Emily's heartbeat hammered wildly. Just hours before she had been sitting in her broken-down car on Highway 61 after the engine gave out. The phone had shown no signal. Panic had crept into her veins like ice water. When the pain started tightening across her stomach, rhythmic and undeniable, she realized she had no time to wait. She grabbed the only thing she had left, a blanket, a bottle of water, and the Scout. She began walking toward the faint glow she believed was Duluth's shoreline. Now she wasn't sure if she had been walking for hours or days. Time had dissolved into the relentless white that surrounded her. A gust of wind slammed into her, forcing her to her knees. Snow soaked through her jeans, instantly burning like fire against her skin. She clutched her belly, teeth chattering so violently she could barely speak. "Not now, please," she whispered. Her mind spun with scattered memories, a tiny ultrasound screen, a heartbeat that didn't belong to her, a man's voice shouting that he wasn't ready for this, and the door slamming as he left. She had promised herself she would be strong, that this baby deserved a mother who fought for her no matter the cost. But now, as another contraction hit harder than before, her vision blurred. She pressed her forehead to the snow, too weak to fight the darkness closing in. Scout barked sharply, circling her. He nudged her with his nose, then pawed at her arm. Emily tried to lift her head, but her limbs felt heavy, as though frozen to the earth. "Scout." Her lips barely formed the word. "Go." It was a whisper, fragile yet filled with desperate command. Scout hesitated. For one heartbeat, his eyes locked on hers. In that moment, something passed between them, an unspoken vow. Then, with a sharp, determined bark, he turned and sprinted into the storm. His strong frame disappeared into the white fury, his paws kicking up flurries of snow as he ran toward the faint glimmer of lights in the distance. Emily lay on the ground, the cold seeping into her bones. She could feel her heart slowing. She tried to focus on the rhythm of her breathing just as she had been taught in prenatal classes. In for 4 seconds, out for 6. But each breath came shorter, shallower. She was tired. Beyond tired, she was fading. Her thoughts drifted to the life growing inside her. She imagined a tiny hand curling around her finger. She imagined singing lullabies. The world blurred again. "I won't let go," she murmured, though she no longer knew if she was speaking out loud. Snowflakes landed on her eyelashes like tiny shards of glass. Her body began to tremble uncontrollably, then slowed as hypothermia began to take hold. Scout ran as if every second were a heartbeat he had to protect. His ears flicked at the sound of distant wind chimes. Metal signs clinking outside a lakeside coffee shack. A glow of yellow light flickered through the storm. Scout barked deep and commanding, the bark of a soul begging for help, his voice the only bridge between life and death. And somewhere in the cabin beyond the storm, someone heard him. Snow blasted across the aerial lift bridge like sheets of broken glass driven by the wind. The iron beams rattled in the storm, and the lamps flickered beneath the weight of ice. Just beyond the bridge, the only light visible came from a small lakeside cafe still open to shelter travelers. Inside, the warm glow of hanging lanterns reflected off fogged windows, and the scent of cinnamon and coffee lingered in the air, like a memory of better days. Scout burst into that light. The door slammed against the wall as the German shepherd forced his way inside, his fur drenched with ice, his paws bleeding from running over jagged ice. His chest heaved, breath coming in sharp bursts that made steam curl from his muzzle. His amber eyes were wild, fixed not on comfort, but on urgency. He barked once, deep and sharp, a command, not a plea. Behind the counter stood Nora Bennett, a woman of 68 with silver hair pulled into a loose braid over one shoulder. Her face was weathered but kind-marked by deep lines that told stories of a life spent caring for others and grieving those she could not save. She was slightly stooped from arthritis, but her blue-gray eyes still held a fierce intelligence. Nora had been a midwife for 3 decades before retiring after losing her only daughter Claire to complications during childbirth. Since then, she had lived quietly, avoiding anything that would reopen the wound in her heart. When Scout leaped onto the rug and began pulling at her coat with his teeth carefully without aggression, her breath caught. There was desperation in the dog's actions, something primal that reached into the part of her that had never stopped being a healer. "Easy boy," she murmured, her voice soft but alert. "Show me." The door opened again, this time with a blast of wind, and Daniel Brooks stepped inside. At 35, Daniel had the hard build of a firefighter with broad shoulders beneath a Navy rescue jacket. His square jaw was covered with several days' worth of stubble, and his dark brown hair was damp with melted snow. His eyes were a deep green, sharp and observant, but behind them lived a quiet sorrow. 3 years earlier, his wife Hannah had died from a sudden hemorrhage during labor. The loss had hardened him, replacing laughter with duty and warmth with vigilance. He paused only briefly at the sight of the frantic dog. "That's a working collar," he said, noticing the reflective strip in the emergency contact tag. "Something's wrong." Scout barked again, then spun toward the door, glancing back only long enough to confirm they were following. He scratched at the door with urgent claws, as if the storm itself were the enemy, and time was running out. Nora grabbed her heavy wool coat and a medical duffel bag she had not opened in years. Her hands trembled as she held it, fear memory, and something else she had almost forgotten, purpose. Daniel stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "Nora, stay behind me. Roads are icing fast. This storm's turning lethal." But the bindhead had already disappeared into the white curtain outside. They climbed into Daniel's rescue SUV, and Scout's dark shape appeared in the headlights. He didn't run aimlessly. He paused at every turn, ensuring they were behind him, then charged forward again. Snow hammered against the windshield. Visibility dropped to 5 meters. The radar on the dashboard flickered with warnings. "This road should be closed," Daniel muttered, recognizing the curve of the shoreline path. The GPS screen blinked red. Impassable. Danger. But Scout kept running. "He's leading us somewhere," Nora said softly, her fingers pressed tightly around a rosary bead she wore as a bracelet. Her heartbeat, which had remained still for years, now pounded with grim clarity. "Someone is out there. Someone who needs us." Daniel didn't argue. He turned off the GPS and followed the dog. For a brief moment, the storm shifted, revealing the edge of the lake, a black abyss of churning ice and wind. Scout paused, his ears pinned back. He whined, then barked once sharply, like punctuation at the end of a sentence only he could understand. Nora leaned forward, her breath misting in front of her. In that instant, a sudden shiver passed through her, a feeling she had not experienced since the night she lost Claire. A whisper in her mind. "This time you will not be too late. Go," she said quietly. Daniel tightened his grip on the steering wheel and pressed forward into the storm, following the only guide they had, one determined dog whose mission had just begun. The storm had quieted to a haunted hush, the kind of silence that made every breath feel sacred and fragile. The moon, pale and distant, cast a cold silver light across the frozen shoreline of Lake Superior. Wind carved long scars across the ice, and cracks glistened like jagged veins beneath the surface. The world felt suspended, as though holding its breath for what would happen next. Daniel's headlights cut through the mist, illuminating a drifting shape ahead. Scout sprinted toward it, his paws kicking up fine powder. When the beam washed over her figure, Nora gasped. Emily lay curled on her side near the edge of the lake, half buried in snow, her dark hair frozen in strands across her cheeks. Her lips were an alarming shade of blue, her breathing shallow, trembling with each faint inhale. Her belly, heavy with child, rose and fell unevenly beneath the soaked coat. Daniel Brooks moved first, reflexively switching into rescue mode. He jumped from the SUV, boots sliding across the icy ground. His voice, calm but clipped with urgency, cut through Nora's growing panic. "Nora, I need the thermal blanket and the emergency heater pad now." Nora obeyed without hesitation. Though her hands trembled, her training overrode fear. She knelt beside Emily, brushing frost from her face. Up close, she could see more: the dark under-eye circles, the cracked lips, the way one hand was still protectively resting over her stomach. Emily's skin was ice-cold, rigid in places where hypothermia had already begun to set in. Nora murmured gently, her voice low and soothing, "You're safe now, sweetheart. We're here." Scout pressed himself firmly against Emily's back, his thick fur shielding her from the wind. He didn't bark, only released a low, mournful whine, as if trying to speak to her soul. Every so often, he nudged her shoulder with his nose, refusing to accept the stillness. Daniel quickly checked Emily's pulse at her carotid artery. His jaw tightened. Weak, almost thready. He placed two gloved hands over her abdomen, feeling for signs of fetal movement through the soaked fabric. A gentle push, a flutter. Relief flickered across his features. "Baby's still moving, but she's in early labor. We don't have time." Nora wrapped the thermal blanket tightly around Emily, while Daniel slid the heater pad beneath her. The pad emitted a steady warmth designed to combat hypothermia without shocking the heart. Daniel spoke softly but firmly to Emily. "Ma'am, my name is Daniel. You're in labor and your body is shutting down from the cold. I need you to stay with us." "Can you hear my voice?" Emily's eyelashes fluttered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a single tear welled at the corner of her eye and rolled down her cheek, freezing halfway. Her lips parted, a whisper escaping like breath from a broken instrument. "Scout, I know," Nora replied softly. "He did his job. Now we're doing ours." A violent gust of wind slammed into them, and the lake groaned as ice shifted beneath the surface. Daniel glanced back toward the road, already buried in snowdrifts, forming faster than the plows could clear. His rescue radio crackled with static, punctuated by a robotic voice. "All roads closed. Emergency services delayed. No access to medical facilities until storm clears. We can't get her to the hospital." Daniel said, fury flashing briefly in his eyes. "If we try to transport her in this, she and the baby won't make it." Nora looked toward the horizon where the lights of Duluth flickered faintly. She felt something awaken inside her, a purpose she had buried under layers of grief. "Then we don't transport," she said steadily. "We stabilize and relocate to my cabin. It's closer and I have what we need." Daniel hesitated only a moment. "You still have supplies?" Nora met his gaze, eyes unwavering. "I never stopped being a midwife. I only stopped believing I deserved to be one." Her voice softened but did not falter. Together they lifted Emily onto an insulated stretcher. Scout jumped into the back of the SUV, first turning to face them as if making sure they followed. Daniel secured the stretcher while Nora placed a warm compress beneath Emily's hands and neck, speaking calmly to guide her breathing. Another contraction rippled across Emily's abdomen. She groaned weakly, but her eyes opened wider. "It's okay," Nora whispered, brushing the frozen hair from Emily's forehead. "You're not alone anymore." As the SUV pulled away, the cracks on the lake's surface widened, with a deep, echoing boom like thunder beneath the ice. Scout leaned forward, pressing his head gently into Emily's lap. Emily's trembling hand moved instinctively to rest on his fur. It was not strength, but surrender, the moment a heart accepts that maybe, just maybe, it has been found. And in that fragile silence, 3 lives shifted toward a destiny none of them could yet imagine. The SUV crawled up the winding road toward Piedmont Heights, its tires fighting the icy incline, as wind howled through the towering pines. At last, a warm yellow glow appeared through the storm, the light from Nora Bennett's cabin windows. The house stood like a guardian in the night, a sturdy wooden structure built from cedar logs, its roof blanketed in snow. Smoke curled steadily from the stone chimney, filling the air with the comforting scent of pinewood and cinnamon. Daniel carried Emily inside with Scout pressed against his leg, refusing to be separated from her, even for a second. The warmth hit them immediately, wrapping around Emily like an embrace. Her breathing, though still shaky, seemed to deepen. She lay on a padded cot that Nora had already pulled into the living room beside the roaring fireplace. A cast-iron kettle hung above the flames, releasing steam, scented with peppermint and clove. Nora moved with a quiet efficiency that came not from haste, but from instinctual care. She had already pushed the heavy oak table aside, cleared space, and laid down layers of sanitized linens from a cedar chest that had clearly not been opened in years, yet remained impeccably organized. Her hands were steady as she arranged medical instruments, a stethoscope, thermometers, blood pressure cuff, sterile gauze clamps, and oxygen tubing. Daniel set up the portable monitor, placing its sensors gently on Emily's skin. The screen flickered to life, showing her heart rate climbing, her blood pressure dangerously low. Emily clutched the sides of the cot as another contraction seized her harder than before. Her face contorted with pain, sweat mixing with the melting snow on her brow. Scout lifted himself onto the edge of the cot, resting his head on her lap. Each time her breath hitched, he released a sharp bark, alerting Nora and Daniel before Emily could even speak. "Contractions are 5 minutes apart," Daniel said, his tone clinical but tense. "She's progressing faster than expected." His hands shook slightly as he adjusted the oxygen mask. Nora noticed. "Daniel," she said gently, "I need you steady. We may be this baby's only chance." Daniel met her gaze. The memories in his eyes of his wife fading on a hospital bed, of alarms blaring, of hands he couldn't save flickered like ghosts. But he nodded, jaw tightening with resolve. Emily's voice came in a breathless whisper. I can't do this here. I don't know you. I don't even know if I'll make it, my baby." Her words broke into sobs. Nora knelt beside her, taking her hand. "My name is Nora Bennett. You are in my home, and you are safe. I've delivered babies in cabins, barns, churches, and parking lots. I have never lost a single child to the cold. You will not be the first." Her voice softened as her thumb brushed Emily's knuckles. "Listen to me. You were meant to be found tonight. This isn't where your story ends, it's where it begins." Emily's eyes glistened with tears. In the firelight, Nora's face glowed with a strength that came not from perfection, but from surviving great pain. Emily hesitated, then whispered, "He left me, the father of my baby. He said we were a mistake from the beginning." Nora's expression softened, grief flickering beneath the surface. "My daughter was 17 when she got pregnant," she said quietly. "People in this town talked. They whispered. They said she brought shame on our family. And because of that shame, I let her go somewhere else to give birth. I thought I was protecting her. I was wrong." Her voice caught, but she did not stop. She died alone, in a hospital far from home. The room fell silent except for the crackle of the fire. Emily stared at her, stunned. A tear rolled down in her cheek, not from pain, but from recognition. "You're helping me because you couldn't help her." "I am helping you," Nora said, placing a gentle hand on Emily's belly, "because no woman should ever face birth in fear, and because this time I will not fail." Scout shifted suddenly and barked once sharply. Daniel stepped forward. Fluid had formed beneath Emily. Her water had broken. A sudden hush fell over the cabin, not of calm but of gathering urgency. Nora straightened her face, transformed with focus. "Daniel, sterilized the clamps. Prepare the oxygen line. We don't have much time." She looked at Emily, eyes blazing with a strength that swept away doubt. "Your baby is coming tonight, and we will bring her into this world together." Scout pressed closer, as if bracing himself for the battle ahead. The storm raged outside, but within the cabin, 3 lives were bound now by something stronger than fear, purpose, faith in the promise of a new beginning, waiting just beyond the struggle. The storm had passed, leaving the world in breathless stillness. Snow lay thick across the pines and rooftops like a blanket of untouched silk. Dawn crept slowly across the horizon, painting the sky with gentle strokes of rose and gold. Yet inside the cabin, time did not move with the sun. It pulsed to the rhythm of one woman's heartbeat, one baby's approaching cry, and one choice that would change all their lives. Emily lay propped against pillows beside the stone fireplace, her skin pale and glistening with sweat. Her hair clung to her temples in damp curls, and her breaths came in sharp, uneven gasps. But her eyes, those hazel eyes once full of fear, now burned with fierce determination. Each contraction shook her, pulling her closer to the moment she both dreaded and longed for. Beside her, Nora moved with the calm certainty of a woman who had walked this path many times before. Her silver hair had fallen loose from its braid, framing her face like a soft halo. Fine lines etched her brow, but her voice remained steady as stone. "Emily, listen to me," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "You are not alone. Do exactly as I say. On the next contraction, you push." Daniel stood near the head of the cot, holding Emily's hand in both of his. His rough palms trembled, though his voice stayed steady. Long shadows played across his jawline, emphasizing the hard angles carved by a lifetime of loss and duty. But now in this moment, his eyes shone not with grief, but with hope. He had seen death arrive in many forms. Today he would witness life. Scout positioned himself at the doorway, massive frame, blocking the room like a living guardian. Every muscle in his body was tense, ears pinned forward, amber eyes locked on Emily. Each time she cried out, he whined softly, his tail sweeping the floor in a slow rhythm, steady, reassuring, relentless. He would let nothing enter this room that did not belong. Another contraction hit stronger than any before. Emily screamed, body arching, gripping Daniel's hand so hard her knuckles blanched. Nora leaned in. "Good. Again. Just like that. You're almost there." Outside, the faint sound of sirens echoed in the valley. A snowplow had finally cleared the road, and an ambulance was making its way up the mountain, too late to change what had already begun, but close enough to be there when the final moment arrived. A powerful silence fell between the contractions, the kind that makes the soul still and listening. Emily's voice trembled. "What if I can't do it?" Her eyes glistened with tears. "What if I'm not strong enough?" Nora placed a hand over her heart. Emily's strength is not the absence of fear. It's choosing love over fear. "Look at me." Emily looked, and in Nora's gaze she didn't see pity. She saw belief, a belief so deep it felt ancient. "This baby wants to meet you. Bring her home." The next contraction surged like a wave. Emily pushed with everything she had, not just with muscle and breath, but with every broken piece of her heart that had carried her to this moment. Daniel whispered encouragement, his voice low and steady. Scout let out one single bark, deep and commanding, as if calling life into the world. Then Nora smiled. "I have her." A thin cry filled the air, rising above the crackling fire, piercing the stillness, with the purest sound the world has ever known, the cry of new life. Nora lifted the baby toward the light of dawn streaming through the window. The child's skin glowed a delicate pink, tiny fists waving with surprising strength, a full head of dark, soft hair crowning her fragile skull. Emily sobbed, laughter and tears blending into one uncontrollable rush. "My baby, is she okay?" "She's perfect," Nora said, her voice breaking for the first time. "Absolutely perfect." Daniel cut the cord with reverent care. Scout approached slowly, ears lowered, tail sweeping the floor in wonder. The baby turned her head toward him, as if recognizing the heartbeat that had slept beside her mother for countless nights. Emily cradled her child, pressing her lips to the baby's forehead. "Her name is Hope," she whispered, "because she was all I had left. And now, she's everything." Nora bowed her head. Tears streamed silently down her wrinkled cheeks. In Hope's birth cry, she heard the echo of the daughter she had lost and the promise of redemption she had been too afraid to believe in. Daniel slowly wiped his eyes. "We should make this official," he said softly. "What happened tonight, this cabin, this child, it can't be the end of something. It has to be the beginning." Nora looked up. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying." Daniel continued, his voice steady. "We start something here. A place for women like Emily. A place where no one is ever left to face this alone. We'll call it Paws and Cradles. A safe haven for mothers, for children, and for the babies who never give up on them." Outside, the first golden rays of sun broke through the clouds, glittering across the snow-covered lake Like a river of light, Scout lay down beside the cradle Nora had brought from her attic, placing his head gently beside it as if vowing to protect Hope until his last breath. Inside that cabin, winter finally broke, not because the storm ended, but because love had chosen to stay. Sometimes miracles do not arrive with trumpets from the sky. They come quietly carried on the paws of a loyal dog, in the hands of a stranger who opens her door, or in the cry of a child born against all odds. In the coldest winter of her life, Emily did not just find shelter. She found God's reminder that no one is ever truly abandoned when love still exists in the world. Hope's birth was not just the beginning of a new life, but the rebirth of every soul in that cabin. It proved that when we choose compassion over judgment, when we choose to act instead of turning away, we become instruments of God's grace. If you are watching this today, maybe you are carrying your own burdens, loneliness, fear, regret. But remember, God's miracles often begin at the very moment we think all hope is lost. A closed door may be protection. A painful goodbye may be redirection. And sometimes the miracle you've been praying for is already on its way on four paws through a snowstorm straight toward your heart. If this story touched something inside you, I invite you to be part of this mission. Share this video so others may feel hope. Leave a comment with your prayer requests or words of encouragement for someone who needs it today. And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow God may use the next story to speak directly to your heart. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May He fill your home with peace, heal what is hurting, and remind you you are never alone. Miracles still happen. Hope is still real. And sometimes it arrives in the most unexpected ways.